You're listening to Through Help and Back. Through Help and Back is a podcast focused on mental health, addiction, treatment, recovery, and all things related to personal improvement and wellness. Don't worry, we're not here to talk about problems without solutions, and we're definitely not here to talk about struggles without success. So come with your problems, leave with our solutions. Welcome back to another episode of Through Help and Back. I am your host, Jason Pratt. Very excited to be here with you today. Producer Ian, we are very lucky. This is like 2 in a row, my friend. You are back in the house on the wheels of steel over there and feeling good. How are you today, Ian?
Oh, I'm good. I'm excited for this episode in particular. Something about Joel just speaks to me.
Well, you just blew it. I was going to tell the guests. I was going to tell them we had a surprise guest, but now they know it's Joel. So there's no way to do that. So
Joel,
yeah.
who? I didn't say Joel. What are you talking about?
No, but seriously, Ian, it's great to have you here. Listen, let's dive right in. We do have an awesome guest for today. I want to get into it, but as just a little bit of a lead in, for guys who have watched us and followers, we cover mental health, we cover addiction, we cover wellness. But with all that, we always want to have a sense of hope, and we always have a sense of like what leads to success. And when we're talking about overall wellness and mental health, there are factors and there are things that are sort of pro mental health and pro wellness, and there are things that are obstacles that make things like that very difficult to achieve. One of the things, not to mention, your background and trauma and family history, those things we all know about, but something that's not really talked about as much is the environment in which you are trying to achieve wellness, the environment in which you're working on your mental health. And so when we think about those individual challenges, one of the industries out there that is not necessarily associated with pro wellness and pro mental health is the entertainment industry. And so part of the reason that Ian is very excited, and I'm excited as well, because I have very little experience with that world, is we have Joel Relampagos with us today. He is an executive producer of The Biggest Loser. He works in the entertainment industry. He works with several companies that I'll let him introduce that you've heard of, I'm sure, and we'll see how much of his work he wants to share. But he has been through a personal journey from start to finish, the ups and the downs, while he was part of that industry. So kind of an amazing challenge, kind of an amazing idea to even think about trying to take those steps in that world. But we're very happy to have Joel today and excited to learn about all that he's been through. So Joel, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. This is such an honor.
I always start off with kind of like, where are you in the world? But being in the entertainment industry, we assume you're on the West Coast somewhere, right?
I'm in Hollywood, California.
the health and wellness capital of the world, right?
The health and wellness capital of the world.
How long have you been in Hollywood, California? You've been out there for a while?
Yeah, I've been out here pretty much since I was 20. 2 decades now.
Oh, well, don't tell on yourself, man. You're looking good.
Know,
you're looking young and fresh, so like, 5 to 8 years, something like that.
I'm proud of it.
Yeah, let's go back. So, before we dig into some of the heavier stuff, tell me what attracted you to Hollywood? What attracted you to entertainment in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I was basically, I was born in the Philippines, moved out here to Southern California when I was 6. And I think in any traditional Filipino household, you're kind of raised to get into the medical field. And I knew that was a problem right away because I had an issue with the sight of blood. And I was just like, this is not going to go down well. But luckily, I really just kind of like grew up watching TV and wanted to pursue, a career in television, to be able to be a producer and to also be responsible for telling the stories of others, I think was huge for me, especially as someone who has grown up in, a marginalized community and as someone who, has gone through, like many, traumas and shame. I felt like there's a lot of stories that needed to be told out there and they just weren't being told. So I wanted to be one of the people that would tell those stories.
I think it's amazing. One of the things we've talked about on the show several times and actually talked about earlier today was how often when we grow up, we become the person we sort of wish we had in our life when we were younger, right? And to hear you, dealing with that, being marginalized, not having the ability to tell your story, not seeing a lot of representation of people telling a story that's like yours, and to grow up and be a storyteller, I think that's an amazing full circle journey in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Which eventually all ties into, my recovery from addiction as well as my mental health journey.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's talk about that since you brought it up. No other reason, right? So it's since you brought it up, we'll cut to the good part right off the bat. You're approaching a pretty significant date in your life, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I'm approaching my 4-year sobriety anniversary. And honestly, I get goosebumps every time I mention it to myself, just because being sober years ago was inconceivable. Like, I never, ever, ever thought I would live a life outside of addiction. And so when I talk about sober anniversaries and, how proud I am of it, I feel really blessed and I feel really grateful.
Yeah, 4 years is not a small amount of time, and as somebody who's worked in the recovery industry for a long time, I've seen a lot of resetting your clean date, starting over, picking up a new chip, going in, starting all over. So to put 4 years together is not a small feat. So congratulations on that. I'm
Thank
sure you're
you.
very
Thank you so
proud.
much.
Yeah, and if you're not proud, you should be. So.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely proud.
So, as a comparison, and to kind of get into your story, how long were you living in addiction? Was it more than 4 years? About the same? Like, what was that? What did that look like?
Yeah, I would say for 17 years I had been drinking, and the farther along I got into those 17 years, the more I was drinking. The last 5 years of that was me drinking at least 2 bottles of wine a night, after work, after hanging out with friends. And it was a very duplicitous lifestyle because I didn't tell anyone how severe the issue was. I think in the public, it felt like I was just kind of having after work drinks. And then I leave events or parties. People would think I'm just going home to call it a day. But no, I was headed to the liquor store to buy more booze because I was so ashamed to drink it in front of everybody else.
How did you said 17 years? So now we're getting into really young Joel. How did that all start for you?
Yeah, so when I turned 21, I was legally allowed to drink, right? So basically, I felt like it was accepted growing up in as an adult in Los Angeles, and much more as someone who was working in the entertainment industry, as someone who was striving to be a producer. It was so accepted, if not encouraged, to drink, right? It's the land of sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever you may call it. And so I felt like, okay, if there's any place to do it, this is it. And so on top of the fact that I felt like I was encouraged, I was going through mental health issues for a very long time. I was never someone that wanted to face my emotions, to deal with my feelings, or to even want to seek therapy. And so alcohol became my best friend. And so basically, as I continued to work and get promotions and work on big shows, it was great because I was either drinking a lot or working a lot. And so in the daytime, I would work a lot, and then when I would come home, I would drink a lot. And then eventually it just caught up with me because my anxiety got worse, my depression got worse, my suicidal ideations got worse, my negative self-talk became louder, because that's what substances do, is they really, first of all, alcohol is a depressant, so that's not a good thing. And when you're someone who's already struggling with depression, it just fortifies that even more. And it's such a liar because in the moment, it feels like you're having the time of your life, but oh, geez, do you have a price to pay,
It is the ultimate credit card, right? And the bills come due. And sometimes it's not even the next day, right? Like sometimes it takes weeks and months for this, or even years for the negative side effects to stack up before you can finally realize, like, hey, this has gotten out of control,
Absolutely.
A lot of times in the field of addiction treatment, we talk about, like, is addiction a standalone illness or is it the symptom of the other illness, right? Like people will say it's not your problem, it's the way you're treating your problem. Do you connect with that experience? Kind of hearing your story, I wonder if that's not part of your story there.
I do. I absolutely do. I didn't feel like it was me loving the taste of alcohol. Like, I just love alcohol, right? It was me loving the fact that I had a vehicle to escape my problems, And I only know that because now, as someone who's sober, I don't even drink like faux alcohol or faux wine, like the non-alcoholic beverages, which means that I'm not like, wow, I just kind of miss the flavor, or I miss, you know, the beverage quality of it. So I look back and I go, wow, I was really just using it to get, messed up and to block, any pain that I was actually feeling. And don't get me wrong, I certainly do feel like other people may feel different, where, alcohol is just alcohol, no matter what you're going through in life, like you're screwed type of thing. But I definitely had some traumas and issues that was underneath the major drinking problem.
As part of your recovery, did you address both sides of the house, so to speak? I mean, were you doing mental health work while you were doing your recovery work, or did sobriety have to come first? Like, how did that work for you?
Oh my gosh, mental health came first. And I knew that the goal was to be sober, but I'll tell you one thing that would not get me sober is somebody saying, don't drink alcohol. Here's why alcohol is bad for you. Because that would have made me want to drink even more. But when I was, in rehab, because I had left entertainment to go to rehab for 50 days, which I was paying for out of pocket. Rehab, all it was back-to-back classes with therapists. And that was when I was learning about boundaries, mindfulness, gratitude. The biggest one is probably the fact that we are the observer of our thoughts and our emotions. We are not our thoughts and our emotions. And I was learning all these things at the age of, 37, the age of 37. And I was like, how am I just now learning about these valuable things that I could have learned, as a kid, right? And think about how many classes we take in school, and some of them were like, we don't even remember. Like, why did I take?
Right.
What does that class have to do with anything? But no, there was at 37 learning things that truly wasn't just changing my life; it was saving it.
It's funny. I have children right now, 10 and 13, and they report back that other than their friends, school is kind of a wash. They're just like, I'm bored. Exactly what you just said. Like, why am I wasting my time on all this stuff? And I'm like, and you're doing the typical dad thing where you're like, no, it'll pay off. You're getting smarter. You don't really realize it yet. So like, keep doing your best, that kind of thing. But I can remember feeling that exact thing. You know what I mean? Like, so much of this, like, it felt like 1 hour of information stuffed into 9 hours, So I wonder why do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I'm sure you've probably elevated a little bit and think about, society as a whole and the culture in which you grew up. Why do you think we place the priorities over on that sort of transient stuff? And why aren't we investing more in the things that are actually going to make a difference when we're 37 and lonely and heading home from a party and don't know how to deal with our emotions? I wonder how we got so far off track.
I think we were just repeating a very outdated cycle. And school systems and whatnot are like, well, here's the curriculum, but we forget how important it is to take care of our mental health until something, I hate to say it, really bad happens to us as a society or as a community, and then that's what it takes for us to come together, right? Where something really bad happens and we go, oh my gosh, mental health is important, or oh my gosh, there are actually, terrible things going on out there. So how do we come together in solidarity? And so I hope that given the 2020 of it all, we've learned just how important taking care of our mental health and of each other truly is, and it starts to get implemented in, the future of the country.
I think you're right in a lot of ways. And I think that the awareness is at an all-time high, but I think the effectiveness may not have moved much, right? Because we know there's an issue now because COVID happened and now anxiety's through the roof, isolation, depression's off the charts. And we're sort of like throwing the old tools at that. And we're saying, the classic thoughts and prayers, but systemically, are we really in a good position to address what we finally realized is a huge problem?
That's right.
One thing I did have a question about, because a lot of people listening to this, they hear addiction and they think about all the things you talked about, right? Like, I kind of hit it. then I want to talk about your story, when you finally decided to get clean. But before that, what was your kind of addict sort of toolkit or your survival skills? Like, how were you able to successfully use for 17 years, advance your career, from the outside looking in, probably had a pretty good life, had some good stuff going on, but you've got this inner turmoil. Like, what was it as simple as just drinking when people weren't around, or what were the survival skills that kept your addiction alive?
Yeah, I'll tell you that inner belief of I'm not good enough became a blessing as well as a curse. Because in the daytime, the idea of I'm not good enough made me work really hard at my job. Granted, that wasn't the best intention, where, I always strived for perfection. And there I was working in an industry where it's all about ratings and validation. So of course it was perfect. Where I was like, "Oh, I'm not good enough. All right, well let me continue to do like the next big thing, and then the next big thing." And then when I would come home, there I was with that exact same mentality of I'm not good enough. And what I didn't have at that time was a job at night, right, to utilize that energy for something. But what I did have was a bottle of booze in my hand. And so it was two different aspects to my day, but the same common denominator, which was a very negative self belief.
It cracks me up that people are constantly surprised that the same people who like to get up on stage or be involved in entertainment and get that validation are the same people that crash so hard. They're like, "Oh, he seems so happy. It's like, well, of course, the person who had that need would also have those unmet needs other places. But did you see a lot of that in, coworkers and talents that you're working with? That's a pretty common theme in the entertainment industry, is that not good enough, hole in the bucket, constant validation. I mean, there's actually a lot of insecurity to it, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I certainly won't overgeneralize that everyone experiences that in entertainment, but there's definitely people that are driven by past traumas, and while it can be used as a tool to advance yourself in your career, until you actually deal with what's going on in your mind and your heart, then that's when the true healing happens. Truly, the true success happens.
And I don't think the entertainment industry has a monopoly on it. We see that in schools. We see that at the grocery store. We see that, at the gym. I mean, it just seems like it's part of the human condition at this point,
Absolutely.
Our problems make us human, just like our strengths and our abilities, It all connects us. So tell me a little bit about the process, because I doubt you drank straight through for 17 years and woke up one day and said, "That's enough. I'm ready to get help." Like, what was the process of sort of recognizing that this was an issue and then coming to terms with getting help? Can you talk us a little bit about, did you have some attempts to get clean early on that didn't work out? Like, what was your process towards accepting the need for healing?
Yeah, absolutely. I, was it would increase the more years that went on. I would just drink more and more, and not just more and more, but isolate more and more. And there have definitely been a few years where I was like, I need to stop. I need to stop. And a couple more years of, oh my gosh, I have a problem. I have a problem. And instead of doing anything about it, I was drinking about it, which really made the drinking worse, because now there I was drinking, going, "Oh my gosh, I have a problem." And I went through the thing where I was like, "Well, I'm just going to stop." And a day would go by, and I'm like, "All right, I need to have another drink." And then the maximum I had went without drinking was 4 days, and that was a struggle. Like, that was white knuckling through 4 days, because I didn't know how to heal myself other than just kind of will myself to not drink. But eventually, it was what people would consider rock bottom. Was, I was on location for a show, and I woke up on a Saturday at like 2 p.m. and a pile of empty bottles of wine. And I remember, being so ashamed that I would take the bottles and throw them out of my hotel room, because I didn't even want the cleaning person to see how much I had drank. Like, that's how much shame. Like, a total stranger, I didn't want them to see how much I drank. And, I was still drunk, and I called my dad at the time on that day. And luckily, my dad was with my sisters, and it was the first time that they ever heard me say the words, "I have a drinking problem. I need help," because I had hid it from them for so long. And that was, the beginning of the best decision of my life.
What had been the impact of your use on your family and other close relationships? I mean, did it drive a wedge? Did it pull you away? Did people walk away from you because of your use, or were they actually in relationships with you because of it,
With my family, I really hid it from them, so I didn't drink around them. I would leave family events early, so I would drink. So they didn't see, that side of me. As for my friends, I was, the bad influence in the group. I was certainly the one that would encourage people to drink more. And then on top of that, next round's on me, this round's on me, because I was trying to bring people down with me because I didn't know how to lift myself up. And that's what people do when they don't know how to lift themselves up sometimes. They go, all right, well, how do I get people to my level?
Yeah.
And so I know that I had pissed a lot of friends off, but luckily I still have my true blue friends that saw past the obnoxious drinking and knew that once I had, kind of healed myself, that a better version of me would arise.
Yeah, I think it's important that people realize too that sort of the intensity of that, right? Like, it's one thing to go out with your friends who like to party, but when you're out with somebody who is like in the midst of their addiction, whether they know it or not, it is a different level, right? Because it is like, like you just described, let's keep going. Like, one's not enough, let's do two. Two's not enough, let's do four. 10 o'clock's not late enough, let's go to midnight. Midnight's not enough, let's go to two. Let's go to four. I mean, it's all, one of the phrases, and 12 step and recovery are great for all these little catchy phrases that you pick up, right? But it's like the one is too many and 1,000's never enough, right? Like, it's just like a bottomless, pit of like. And the other one I hear a lot is my drug of choice was more. Whatever it was, whether it was the sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, I just wanted more, whatever, more of anything. So yeah, I'm just trying to think about the pressure, because you had to feel so many eyes on you in kind of a very public industry. You've got the pressure to hide it from your family. I mean, you had to feel like you had to be on like 24/7. You know what I mean? I don't know. That just must have been very stressful. Yeah.
It was definitely stressful. And after rehab, I remember thinking, do I tell people about what I went through, and or do I just kind of bury it under the rug and go back to work as usual? And, I made a conscious decision and said, I'm going to talk about addiction and recovery and mental health. And if I lose, friends or jobs, whatever it may be because of that, then that's fine, because at least I'm speaking my truth and I'm actually, helping others, because that was a big part of why I struggled for so long, was I didn't have many people to look up to that reminded me of me and went through a struggle, but also went through the hurdle of getting through that struggle.
And you think about addictive processes, if you're hiding what's real about you, you're right back in that hotel room hiding the bottles before the maid shows up, right? It's the same.
Absolutely.
It's the same shame response that tells you to hide the bottles that tells you to hide your recovery. And so that's interesting.
That's right.
That impulse is in there. So, well, tell us about going to rehab. I mean, did you go one time? Did you do multiples, or were you kind of one and done?
Oh my God. I felt like I was a contestant on one of my own reality shows, because
Yes.
I was so nervous. The night before I got so drunk, I was like, I'm
Yes.
crying. And of course, the morning of, I was hungover, and I called my sister, who was gonna drive me, as well as my dad. And I was like, I don't think I need to do this. Like, let me just have a little bit more time. And then that was really scary, because they were like, you need to you need to do this. So my two dogs stayed with my sister. We drove about 2.5 hours to go to rehab. And there I was, someone who has been traditionally, really into control and controlling things, or tried to rather. I had to release that control and just kind of surrender to what was about to happen. And so I walked in and, turned in my keys. I knew I couldn't get out whenever I wanted to. I had to, kind of like meet these like total strangers. It really did feel like I was entering a reality show. There's like cameras there for surveillance, and I didn't know what to expect, right? And that first week was really difficult because I went from 17 years of not drinking to all of a sudden not drinking. Luckily, there was medical supervision to just kind of transition me from becoming, someone with a drinking problem to not. But what really brought ease to the whole experience was learning all of these new things and being in a community where I knew that I wasn't alone. Being with other people, like everyone there, was addicted to something. And I was like, wow, and we're here to openly talk about it. And all of a sudden we had therapists to help us. And I spent 50 days there and I loved it so much, so much. I journaled every single day. And it just changed my life. And I, like I said, one of the biggest lessons I learned was the fact that I'm the observer of my thoughts and that I can change my own story, and how everything in my life is basically driven off of, the story that I tell myself and that inner dialogue, and how traumas are not my fault, and but I can heal from them. I can reparent myself, like all these amazing things. It was really, truly a blessing.
One thing we should pause on, to be honest, is talk about this process of detox, because alcohol is one of those substances that it's actually very dangerous to just stop. And so
right.
if you're listening to this is not Jason saying, "Hey, keep drinking." What I'm saying is that when you're ready to stop, medical supervision is a key part, and really for any substance. I mean, if you're physically addicted to anything, you really need to be under medical supervision if you're ready to stop, because people can get very sick. I mean, people can die when they try to detox on their own. So during that detox process or any other part in the process, because it sounds like you bought in pretty quick and really gave it your all, but were there any doubts along the way? Did you ever think about leaving or heading back out? Because that's a big problem in rehab, is people taking off.
Absolutely. There were definitely triggers that would happen in rehab when I would get angry about something, or I wasn't willing to cover a certain aspect of my life. I noticed that my first thought would be, I need to get a drink. And, I remember I would get so, I would go through moments of anger where I envisioned myself hopping the fence and just running to, the closest liquor store. And one of the things that I learned in rehab, was that feeling is healing. And so I would go through that anger, and that thought of hopping the fence would arise. And so I was taught to, feel what your anger feels like where in your body do you feel it? Where is this anger truly coming from? Because, for 17 years, I created a habit of whenever I'm uncomfortable, I drink. And there I was changing that pattern. That was my algorithm, if you will. And so I had to change that.
Yeah, another one of the things they teach you is first thought wrong, right? Like your first thought is often wrong because it comes from that hurt place. It comes from that emotional place, right? And so if you can just wait, if you can just kind of wait out that first thought, eventually clarity will come, So, yeah, absolutely.
Before we go on, I want to say a few words about Anew Behavioral Health. Anew Behavioral Health is an outpatient provider of mental health and substance abuse services in Ohio and New Hampshire. That means that Anew can successfully treat mental health and substance abuse issues or dual diagnosis if you're struggling with both. Their integrated approach allows for them to successfully address issues related to anxiety, depression, addiction, trauma, and really anything that stands between your life and the life you could be living. You really cannot bring them an issue that they have not successfully treated. They have also solved one of the biggest problems for people seeking help. They have a dedicated team waiting to hear from you at helpnow@anewbh.com. If you contact them today, within 24 hours, you will have heard back from, wait for this, a real live person, and will also have your first appointment scheduled at that time. So how do you contact them? Well, if you're in Ohio or New Hampshire, you're probably close to one of their local locations. You're welcome to go in. If not, you can always reach them online at anewbh.com. And if you're interested in services for you or loved one, use that address, helpnow@anewbh.com.
What I'm interested. So you did 50 days. Was that a conscious choice? Did you decide that ahead of time? Was that when you were ready? Why 50 days?
It was supposed to be at least 2 weeks. And then I kid you not, I really loved it so much that I was like, well, what's the best amount of time? And they said on average 30 days. And so I was like, done. And mind you, I was paying out of pocket. So, I was very fortunate that I didn't have to go through, insurance or whatever, which, as we all know, can be so flawed because there's a lot of people that need help, but they just don't have the finance or the support that could be there to get through an addiction. But I spent 30 days there, and they're like, all right. And I was like, I want to learn more, And so I stayed for another extra 20 days because, again, it was like an experience that I was shocked I didn't have when I was younger. And the experience meaning learning about the mind and healing and my relationships with others.
I will say in 20 years and working in the field, that's not an experience I've often had where you're telling a client it's time to go home and they're like, no, I'm staying here. Kudos to you, Joel, because I haven't heard that one very often. But I think it speaks to the healing process you were in and the needs. I mean, you had unmet needs. If you weren't ready, you weren't ready. And I bless you for listening to yourself and going, no, I'm going to get what I need. Because it's better to do it right the first time, than to have to do that and bounce around. Because I'm often very suspicious of those quick, a week here, 2 weeks there. I don't know how you can live one way for 17 years and fix it in a week. I just
absolutely. And even in the 50 days, I put in so much focus and energy and passion into truly wanting to become better. You can obviously spend 50 days in rehab and then leave and go straight to a bar. It's all about the work that you put in is also the amount that you actually get out of it. And I was taking it very seriously. It wasn't a joke, and it also wasn't a vacation, and I didn't
Right.
want it to go to waste. And honestly, one of the biggest things that made me take it so seriously was seeing people coming in for their, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time. And the common denominator that everyone would say was, I got really cocky and I thought that I could handle just one drink. I thought that I already, had it down. And so there I was writing in my journal, don't get cocky. You know what I mean?
yeah, I do.
Don't think that you're just going to leave and be like, I got it, and then have a drink. And so I'm actually very thankful for those people for telling their stories. And, I wish that we all learned from it, including them.
Well, and it's a high level endeavor to try to change your life in that way. And I think about the world of athletes, and one of the things that they really focus on is staying humble, right? Stay humble, stay hungry, because you can start winning a little bit and you can feel like I'm the man and I've got this. And then what happens is then it invades your habits, right? You don't work as hard. You don't put in the time. You don't work on your craft. And then somebody beats you and you go, what the hell happened? And you trace it back to that moment where you're like, I got this. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Right. And I like what you said about it wasn't a joke and it wasn't a vacation. Like you were facing a life-threatening disease, a life-threatening condition. Like if you did not take care of your addiction, it was going to take your life one way or the other. And so not to be melodramatic about it, but to bring that gravitas to it. Like some people get in, and I've been in those groups where they're jacking around and screwing around. And I'm like, hey, people end up dead over this, man. What are we doing?
Yeah. I've always seen people or experiences, well, people too, as, a what to do textbook and a what not to do textbook. And I would see people in the rehab, smoking area just being like, man, I can't wait to get out. And they're already talking about like deals and, can't wait to do this and that. And I remember thinking, okay, that's not what I want to do, and obviously everyone's in very different places of their healing journey. But I was like, that does not serve me to even think that,
Definitely does not. And we see those people again. I worked in a facility. This was way back in the old days where you had paper charts and you had to write all your notes. And each chart had a letter behind it, right? So, we would have Joel, and then your last initial, and then we'd put an A by it for your first time. And your second chart would be a B, right? And then a C. And I can remember the day that we had our first ever Z chart. And yeah.
As in their 26th visit?
26. They had bounced around and been back and forth 26 times. And now, to be fair to this person, this was somebody that wasn't funded in the same way. They're at the limits of their insurance. Insurance sends them home all the time. But I can remember it was almost like a weird kind of pseudo party atmosphere amongst the staff. And I was pissed. I was like, this means we have failed this guy 25 times. Like, what are we doing? And we don't know that there's going to be a whatever comes after Z. I don't know, right? Like, so back to the A chart. AA. So AA. Oh, that'd be perfect. Yeah. So, no, that's interesting. So I'm glad you took it serious. And you've only done the one. You haven't gone back. Have you had any relapses along the way?
No relapses along the way.
Wow. Wow.
Never gone back. Yeah. Thank you. And truthfully, that was something that people had talked to me about. I remember I was after I left rehab, I was like, I'm going to get a tattoo of my sober date. And people were like, be careful because, people relapse and you just never know. And so one of the best pieces of advice somebody gave me was, you should kind of be terrified about what this can do to you, and I kind of keep that fear of like, yikes, I went through like a really terrible time in my addiction. Like I never want to go back there. And that's what's driven me. Not that I'm saying I live in fear, because of course I have things that I'm so grateful for, but I never ever want to forget how bad that movie was that I starred in for 17 years. Because I never want to be in it ever again.
Yeah, it was a dark comedy, and maybe not even a comedy, right? Like it was
2 thumbs down.
Rotten Tomatoes for sure. Yeah. But it's interesting to say that, because think about living sober and different. Like we were talking about John Mulaney before, and he's got a hilarious joke about, he's like, I smoked crack the day before I graduated college, and now I'm nervous about taking a second Tylenol. Right? He's like, people change, So when you look back on how you just lived your day-to-day life and imagine that in your current version of yourself, it's like it just doesn't fit. It's terrifying to think about, really.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said that, because even now, when I'll have like a drink of an energy drink or something, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this alcohol? But that's the kind of fear that you're just like, because I never want to go back there, But yeah, no, I resonate with that.
And there's also some hypervigilance that comes up in recovery where like behaviors, right? Like, does this lead me closer to my addiction, right? Like if I lied to my parents, am I now back in my addictive thinking? Or, the energy drink is a perfect example, right? Or if I take, if the doctor prescribed me one pain pill a day, but I was having really bad pain and I took a second pain pill, like, am I now back in my addiction? Do you struggle with that, or do you feel pretty stable? I mean, do you kind of watch your behaviors as much as you watch your substances? Because I think it can be so easy to just be like binary, like I took a drink or I didn't, good day or bad day, but it's not really that easy, is it? Yeah.
No, not at all. It's I definitely had transfer addictions in the sense that I was eating nothing but sugar for weeks. Because it was like, well, I don't drink, so I'm just gonna keep eating my desserts. But it's also worked out in a great way in the sense that I had so much time. I was like, well, let me start a mental health nonprofit. Let me start to take my physical health seriously, and I really turned to physical fitness as a coping tool and a therapist to, I don't even say it as a replacement for drinking, but it was a new coping tool that I really loved.
So one of the things, the physical fitness, I'm glad you brought that up, because I see that a lot in people's recovery stories. Is like, I hurt my body for so long, so now I'm going to help my body. But I also think there's something to do with the identity of that, right? Like, I'm the type of person who is healthy. I'm a healthy person. So what fits with a healthy person versus what used to fit with an unhealthy person? Do you think that this has changed you at your core? Like, are you literally a different person in recovery than you were in sobriety, or are you Joel just doing different things?
I'm a stronger version of the old Joel. Like, I
Gotcha.
still have that personality that, friends, family, love, but different in the sense that my values are different. I value my sobriety. I value my physical fitness. I value myself, for the first time ever. So same personality, from friends and family, but better values for sure.
You didn't say it, but I'm guessing you can also enjoy being Joel without somebody else telling you, like, Joel is good, or getting that attention or that outside validation. I'm guessing a lot of that is more internally focused now.
Yeah, I used to be such a big people pleaser, as someone who grew up, in a Filipino household. It's just kind of like how you're trained. And on top of that, having a job in entertainment where you are, entertaining. And so that was a part of my DNA for a while. And now I understand that, the longest relationship I'm ever going to be in is with myself. And that's the only person that I truly, at the end of the day, have to be happy with. And, one of my favorite quotes is, confidence isn't, I'm going to make everyone like me. Confidence is, I'll be okay even if they don't, And so I think about that, and that gives me so much peace, because my life used to be all about, well, what if this doesn't work out? What if the person doesn't like me? What if this job sucks or whatever? But now I go like, all right, well, even if that doesn't work out, like, I still have my friends and my family, even if, you know what I mean? So the dialogue has changed, the message has changed, and the values have changed.
And I think when all that like external stuff is like, what if, I mean, you're kind of like the paper bag in the wind. You're getting blown in all these different directions, like things that are not in your control. If they're good, then you can be good. And that's like, it just feels like a very unanchored existence, right? Like, I just hope something good happens so I can feel good, versus, having that internal foundation.
Absolutely.
I heard somebody say that, like, when I get to the point where I like myself, like, your like is extra. So I like having your like, but I don't need it because I already have mine. You know what I mean? And yours is just like a plus one. So I like that idea
only
too.
you can define your self-worth.
I want to talk about your mental health nonprofit for sure. So I want to get to that next. But before we go there, I want to talk about, because we always try to leave with like kind of some prescriptive stuff and hope and how this works. And so, you went through rehab, you got out, you maintained your sobriety. I mean, you're setting some records here. Never a relapse. Never had to go back to rehab. Like I got to tell you, like you're in a small piece of the percentile right there. That's really good and amazing. You should feel good about that. But what does that look like day in, day out? What do you do to maintain your sobriety? We're talking a lot of mindset stuff, but what are the investments you make in yourself? What are the habits, routines that help keep you on the beam, so to speak?
Yeah, the first thing is always taking care of my mental health. And I'm not saying that my, depression or anxiety, it never comes back. I'm just saying that now I know how to respond to it when it does arise. Because what I used to do when that thought of you're worthless, you'll amount to nothing would arise, I would go, oh, you're right, let me drink because now I'm sad. So when those negative thoughts arise, I go, oh, that's not actually me, that's a thought. What can I do now to make myself feel good? Can I journal? Can I meditate? Can I go work out? Can I go hang out with a friend? Can I go hang out with a family member? So there's a lot of community involved in my life, on top of the fact that I take care of my mental health. Physical fitness is a big part of my life because I need those happiness chemicals. And I'm talking about dopamine, endorphins, serotonin, all that stuff that our body naturally creates. And, when I was drinking, you get dopamine, right? It's just that easy peasy hit of dopamine. And so it's all about finding ways that I can reach dopamine levels without having to harm myself. And you can get dopamine from achieving tasks. And that's why I created a nonprofit too, because I like to create tasks for myself. And then when you achieve it, you're rewarded and you are proud of yourself. And so that's really just the main thing, is just being mindful of my inner dialogue, knowing that I can change it however way I want to. It's going to take work, but I can change it.
Yeah, one of the things that we would talk about with people who are in early recovery, especially, not those 4-year guys that have it all, but I'm talking about the early recovery guys,
Sure.
No, but we would talk about like your mental health in the short term can actually feel worse, right? Because now you don't have the place to hide. Right. And so people would get into rehab and they'd say like, oh, I can't wait to get sober. Life will be great. And we'd be like, no, not at first. It won't. It's going to be so much worse because you don't have that place to hide. You got to face life on life's terms. So it feels like you might have experienced that a little bit. Did you go through that as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is that one of the best things with sobriety is, experiencing all the emotions. And one of the worst things about sobriety is experiencing all of the emotions. And geez, it is, it's tough, but it is so, again, like working out, right? Where it's uncomfortable, but it's actually making you stronger the more that you prove to yourself that you can do it. And so I think that for anyone who's in the early stages of recovery, I kid you not, I did this in rehab. I created a list of triggers and I created a list of coping skills. And it was like pages and pages of triggers of like, someone cuts me off the freeway, so a coworker upsets me, a friend upsets me. And then I created coping skills on each side, because the only coping skill that used to be there before was a drink, and so I really had to prepare myself. And that's something that I would advise people, is just start to envision what are those triggers going to be in your life that makes you want to use or drink. Because the whole point here is to change your habits and routine, and to also not get overwhelmed by the fact that you can't do it, because you can. And it's just all about those baby steps and going one step at a time.
Do those thoughts and principles, they've worked their way into your nonprofit? I mean, tell me a little bit about the history of what you're trying to do with your nonprofit, and I wonder how much of your recovery principles show up on the nonprofit side of your work.
Yeah. So after I left rehab, after spending thousands of dollars out of pocket,
Yes.
I was like, holy smokes! Not everyone has this luxury of kind of skipping through insurance and just paying out of pocket to save your life, And so what I wanted to do was take my rehab experience and put it in a virtual space where volunteer therapists lead 100% for free mental wellness classes. And as I mentioned, I went to rehab at the end of 2019. And so when 2020 happened, I was like, wow, this is such a perfect time to launch a free mental wellness program where people can get support through licensed therapists. And so the program is called Change Your Algorithm. And the reason why it's called Change Your Algorithm is because we have that algorithm of negative self-beliefs that we think we just kind of have to live with, because that's the algorithm, right? Like when you're on Instagram or whatever, you're like, oh, these are just the things that pop up. But you can actually change your algorithm. And that's what we talk about through our therapy sessions is, everything that I learned about in rehab. And so we've been in a program for over 3 years now, and we have a community of thousands. But that's what I mean about taking an experience that you have and not sweeping it under the rug, but actually using it to help others, because you help yourself too. You remind yourself of your journey and your progress.
And again, part of the things that unites us all, I think that, in people that aren't disordered, but there's a natural, instinct to kind of pay that stuff forward. There's a kind of that instinct to fill that gap that you experienced, right? Like I see a problem and I fix it. I see how people are staying sick and I want to be part of the solution. And that shows up around the country. People understand, like, I mean, your platform sounds amazing, but there's like, how many meetings are going on right now that somebody is just volunteered to like lead that AA meeting or that NA meeting? How many support groups are happening? How many sponsors are with addicts right this second going, hang in there, man. One more day. You can do this. I did it. You can do it, So to bring us all together on a digital platform, it's such an amazing way to harness that giving energy. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. And, it's what you're doing too, because I think stories of hope is so important, especially in a world where we can see nothing but bad news and we can follow toxic things on social media. And we have people in our lives that gossip. And, there's a lot of anger out there. And so when you choose to be a part of a space where there's hope, there is faith, there is energy put towards a better tomorrow, you start to feel good. And you start to feel like your life can actually change. Because I'll tell you this, when we go through anxiety and depression, we live in a world where everything sucks and we're the worst and it's never going to get better. So you might as well just keep, And so it's all about shifting that narrative, and there's ways to do it.
And I think people need to realize too, we're in a closed, connected system. I can't hurt somebody else without hurting myself, right? And I can't help somebody else without helping myself. I may not help somebody on Monday and get my help on Tuesday, but it's coming back around. You know what I mean? It all contributes to this closed, connected system for sure.
Have you heard of mycelia?
What's that?
It's a plant system. It's the roots underground, like fungal plants and all types of plants. And what happens is when one of the roots starts to break or become diseased and is starting to die or fall apart, the other roots around it start to carry and filter other nutrients, minerals, and water to that root that's dying. And I love that story so much. I learned it in Zion when I went there, because that's why a sense of community is so important, and isolating could be so harmful, because sometimes, and that's why asking for help is so important, because sometimes we can feel like we're dying and that it's not going to work out at all. But when you have a community of people, it makes things a little bit better and makes things a lot easier.
I think find your tribe is one of the big highlight, like bold, like have tos of this whole journey, right? You've got to find where you're going to be connected and supported. Like humans, I mean, did 2020 teach us nothing other than we don't do well in isolation? Like humans are not meant, I mean, it's cool to have a vacation, but day in and day out, we're not meant to be isolated. And we see that in animals too. Like animals that are kicked out of the pack, they don't flourish. They just don't.
Yeah, there's a difference between isolated and solitude.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Usually it's the choice, right? Solitude is by choice, and isolation is everybody else is chosen for you because they're like, I don't want to be around that. I'm done with you. Like I'm kicking you out. I'm getting away from you. And I think about, Ian pulled up the mycelium. I was looking at the graphic. It reminded me too, like early, indigenous populations, the way they treated mental health, addiction, whatever, was the exact opposite of what we do now. They would bring people into the village and surround them with people in the tribe, right? And so it was like one of these we're not leaving till you're okay kind of things. And there would be different rituals. Well, look what we do today. We take the person who's the problem, we get them out of the tribe as far as possible, right? Like you even said, I went away to rehab, and you found a new tribe there. So I'm glad it worked for you, but I'm worried we have this backwards in a lot of really key important ways. You know what I mean? The people who need help the most are almost treated like the ones who deserve it the least. And I just think that's backwards. How do people access your platform? How do people who need the services access it? And how do people who want to help? Because I know a lot of therapists, like how do they get connected?
Yeah, so our website is changealgorithm.com, and that will give you a list of 100% for free mental wellness classes led by our licensed therapists. And there's also, a place where you can send messages such as, therapist recommendations, or if you want us to cover a certain topic like healing from grief and loss, we take those messages and then we talk to our therapists about it so that we can lead those classes. You can also follow our Instagram at Change Algorithm, and that's where we post more upcoming classes.
Oh, I love the feedback loop there too. So this isn't just like a preset number of offerings. You actually take feedback from people and offer classes based on that.
Yeah, it's community led, because we want to make sure we provide what people want. Type of thing. And our therapists are so amazing because at first I thought the hook was that, hey, if you're a therapist, you can join this and, get private clients out of it or whatever. But the therapists that wanted to join were like, I am so filled with clients that I just want a space where I can talk to as many people as possible and be of service that way. I don't even need any clients. And so it really worked out even better than I thought.
Your business side was coming through. You were making deals and trying to get people connected. And they're like, no, dude, I just want to help. Like, I just want to.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, what's the value for them? And it turns out they actually genuinely love to help people. I was like, all right, this is a win-win.
So amazing, Joel. We're down to 4 or 5 minutes. I want to be respectful of your time here, but I often ask people this kind of near the end. So if somebody's listening, that is in your shoes that you used to be in, right? Maybe they're in active addiction, they're drinking, they're hiding, they're feeling all the stuff that you were feeling. If you could have a moment to kind of speak to them and advise them, what encouragement or advice or steps, action steps would you give that person who's listening who might be going through what you used to go through?
Yeah, I would say replace judgment with compassion, because I used to judge the hell out of myself as opposed to providing compassion to myself. And compassion is a very specific type of love. It is love that you give to yourself through a moment of pain or suffering. And that moment of pain and suffering isn't caused initially by you. Your traumas are not your fault, but you're not defined by your past, but you are able to redefine what your future is going to look like. And so the last thing I want to say too is asking for help is a form of strength. I think that is complete bravery right there. And the more people ask for help, the better this society will be.
Amen to that. I want to support you on that too, because where I grew up in the Midwest, it was like be big, be strong, be quiet. You know what I mean? You don't need to share your problems. Nothing goes outside the house. Like just suck it up and toughen up. And after 20 years as a therapist, I want to agree with you 1,000%. The bravest and strongest people are the ones who can walk through those doors, break down, tell the truth, show all the stuff that they've been hiding, and those are also the people who often get their life back. Right? The people who don't go all the way with it, they end up with those Z charts. They end up coming back. They end up with the relapses. So you do truly get out of it what you put into it. So listen, Joel, I'm honored, man. I thank you so much. I'm gonna cut you loose, but I do want to tell you we had a little surprise for you. So I know your date's coming up on the 22nd. So Ian has made a commitment. I'm putting you on the hook. We're gonna have this thing cleaned up, and we're gonna put this out on the 22nd in honor of your 4th year.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Ian. That's awesome.
Ian's looking at me with big eyes like, I'm what? No, I'm kidding. We're going to get it out here.
No,
next week?
It's my sole purpose in life.
Yeah, Joel, you know how production schedules work, right? Somebody just says
Ian,
something.
today is September 21st, right?
Oh, 21st?
I'm just kidding. No.
Hold up. That's going to mess
funny.
up our flow.
It's funny because I saw him start clicking real fast and opening things up. But seriously, Joel, thank you so much, man. You're welcome to come back on your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever you want to do and celebrate. And I do want to talk to you offline a little bit about getting connected to your platform. Like I said, I know a lot of therapists, and my organization that, we're mission-based. Anew Behavioral Health it's run all by therapists. So we don't have the accountants, the MBAs. It's literally 2 therapists and a psychiatrist that got together and said, hey, we're the one to help people. Let's see what that looks like when the people who actually do the helping are in charge. So I know we have people with big hearts who want to help in that way. So until then, I just, much gratitude, much thanks, and best of luck for your continued success, man. We're all very proud of you and cheering for you. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate you, brother. And thank you for everything that you do to be of service to so many. So
absolutely. And I'll see you in Akron someday. We talked about that. So who knows? Maybe one of these days we'll get together. Let's get it. And then for you guys watching, again, I always say your most valuable resource is your time. And I'm honored that you would spend this time with Joel and Ian and I. Thank you so much for what you've done. Joel's giving you some great advice. If you are one of those people who are struggling and you're in Ohio, New Hampshire, please think about Anew Behavioral Health, psychiatry, therapy, case management, nursing. We have a holistic integrated program just ready for you that can be shaped to your individual needs. You can reach out at helpnow@anewbh.com. Or the website, anewbh.com. If you're in one of those other states or you find yourself in a financial position where some of those other services aren't reachable for you, look at the links below for all of Joel's programming. I'm certain that there's classes that will speak to you, and it's great to hear that you can submit some ideas, and maybe those classes will become a reality in the near future, and they can speak to your needs.
That's right.
So help is available. Be one of those strong people. Reach out. There's options for you. And if we can't help you, you have my commitment that we'll find somebody that can. I promise you that. So until next time, thanks to Joel. Thanks to Ian. Appreciate you guys so much. And for everybody watching, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Thanks for coming.
Hey guys, although Through Help and Back is an excellent podcast with a lot of great ideas, I do want to let you know that in no way is Through Help and Back expected to be perceived as or relied upon in any way as specific medical advice or mental health advice for you personally. The information provided through Help and Back on our website or our podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment that can be provided by your own providers. Do not use our content in lieu of professional advice given by qualified medical professionals, and do not disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking professional advice because of the information you have read on our website, heard on our podcast, or otherwise received from us. Although we love discussing issues related to healthcare, mental health, and addiction, we are not providing direct healthcare, mental health care, medical, or nutrition therapy services. We're not attempting to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure in any manner whatsoever any physical or psychological ailment, any mental or emotional issue, disease, or condition. We are not giving you specific medical, psychological, or religious advice whatsoever. Please take care of yourself and take care of others as you always seek the advice of your own medical providers and your own mental health providers regarding any questions or concerns you have about your specific health, or before implementing any recommendations or suggestions from us. These are ideas that have worked for other people. We think it's important to share them. We do not guarantee that they will work for you specifically. Do not stop taking any medications without speaking to your physician, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, mental health provider, or any other healthcare or medical professional. And if you have or suspect that you have a medical or mental health issue, contact your own healthcare provider promptly. Also, one last thing, if you know or suspect that you are currently experiencing a crisis, it is absolutely imperative that you seek the advice of your doctor or other emergency healthcare services prior to ever thinking about using our content. We love the conversations. We're glad you're stopping by. We hope you take a lot from the content. But again, for your specific individual medical situation, please always seek quality personal care from your own providers. Do not let this information or this advice stand on its own. Thanks so much for listening.